What's the deal? It's your boy Finesse Hustle back with another installment of Hood Prison Stories. So yeah, man, as the title read, the Bloods had Pam Lynch in the state jail on lock. So I'm gonna paint the picture for you. So this gotta be probably like, well, put it like this. This that Lil Wayne era. This the era where they had probably was relocated in Houston at the time, but like it was a bunch of, like, the Bloods was just popping up everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Not to take away from the Bloods that already was down there. You know what I'm saying? Like the Jailhouse Bloods and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Trinity Gardens. You know, all the real hoods that been, you know what I'm saying, throwing the bees up or whatever. But like at this time, you know, it'll fluctuate. So anybody that the prison population, it'll fluctuate a little bit, but it'll be between the Crips and the Bloods. So, you know, and then a lot of the ways that like the shit was going down, say like they homie come in, they from Third Ward or whatever, right? How to go? They getting in these gangs in jail, so it's a little bit different than how Chicago gangs is and shit. You already be plugged in from the streets and shit, you know what I'm saying? Not saying all them guys weren't plugged in from the streets, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of that shit go on in the joint and shit, you know what I'm saying? So say your homie from your hood, he go to prison or whatever. While he in prison, he become a Blood or a Crip or whatever. So when you get in there, you know what I'm saying, he from your hood already, so he letting you know what's going down and how this shit going or whatever. So you, fuck it, this my man's from the block. I'm with this shit too. So that's how to go. Or say the homie get out and then he go to his hood, he go back to his block and shit, and he super Crip, super Blood or whatever. He gon', if he got some influence or whatever, his homies gonna follow up under that shit. So that's how that shit was going. So at this particular time, man, it was just going crazy in there. So, you know, the Bloods had that bitch. They had the cigarettes and shit, you know what I'm saying? The guards in Texas, boy, if y'all know about Texas jails, they ass real sleazy and slimy to the fullest because they weren't getting paid. So at this time, I don't know how they get paid now, but they was making much as a Walmart worker and shit, you know what I'm saying? So like, the living conditions, the way they treated motherfuckers was bogus and shit. So it made room for you to be able to gain some economic gain off of that shit. You know what I'm saying? They gonna bring shit in. They gonna do all type of shit. So the Bloods had it and shit. You know what I'm saying? So it was this nigga in there. He was like the OG Blood. His name was Blue and shit. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, in the world, he was a smoker or whatever, but in a joint, you know what I'm saying, that shit don't mean shit. Niggas get in there, you know what I'm saying, get a sober mind, sober body and shit, and get the, you know what I'm saying, coming with some sense. And he was a real leader though. You know, he had that shit on lock. So he had it orchestrated where everything was coming through the Bloods in that bitch, you know what I'm saying? The Crips kind of fell to the wayside and shit, not taking away nothing from them, but you know how it go in prison. When there's certain key players coming there, then that shit get moved around like a chessboard for sure, you know? So that's just what was going on, you know what I'm saying? So he orchestrated it like that. He had everything organized. Everybody, if you wanted to smoke, you know what I'm saying, you had to go through the Bloods and shit. They had that shit organized on every little unit. And the way the state jail set up, like a damn near like a warehouse and shit. So it's what, three cubicles on one dorm and shit, and there's 60 beds in there. It ain't no cells or nothing. It's just straight 60 beds in that bitch. So picture goddamn the movie Colors when Fam went up on the pod and shit, and it was just gang of niggas doing what the fuck they want to do. That's how that shit is up in there in the state jail and shit. So that what was going on, just to paint a picture. So you know, shit, we smoking squares for $1.50 and shit. They rolling them up. Now, it costs in the world out there, we smoking buglers and shit. You know what I'm saying? That was the tobacco they was bringing in. So in the world, that shit costs $150. And there, just to get it in, it costs $100 and shit. But then in return, you gonna turn around and shit, and you can sell that shit for $100. But I left out something. You get a 5 packs for $100, so you gonna make your bread and shit. You know what I'm saying? So it'll cost them, you know what I'm saying, like, what, $4-5 and shit, you know what I'm saying, to grab 5 packs of the buglers and shit, you can get you 100 roll-ups. So you already know how it was going and shit. So it was a real problem in there on the power struggle side, but they had numbers. So because they had some way to survive in that bitch, and it was benefiting them. So they get new recruits because they recruit in the jails. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, it's different than Illinois' prison system and really the Midwest. We don't really, motherfuckers not getting in the gang while they already in there. We ain't got prison gangs. Our gangs from the street become the prison gang, if you want to call it that shit, you know. But so that's what they was doing. So the way that shit all like end up coming to an end and shit, you know, Texas, that's a black Mexican state. It's a bunch of black people depending on what region you in. So when you get locked up in the Houston area, you're gonna go, if you're not going to TDC, you're gonna go to TDCJ. That's like it's like baby prison, if you want to call it that. You know what I'm saying? You do like 2 years and under and shit, but it's a prison setting. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So what happened was, you know, shit, motherfuckers be having jobs, so it's a lot of black people that be getting the prison jobs, and they be from the ghetto, they be from the hood and shit. So it was this girl, she ended up getting a job there and shit, and she started fucking with one of the Bloods, and like the guard inmate relationship shit, that shit was at an all-time high. You know what I'm saying? So that's how that shit was. So instead of her just fucking with one of the Bloods, shit, she was fucking with all of them. So like when you first come in the jail and shit, in Texas jails, you got to get all your hair shaved off and shit. So they got the little barbershop as soon as you come in. So on the weekends, there's no like administration there and shit. So it be like wild as hell. You know what I'm saying? Certain guards that's working and shit, when we see them, we already know it's real party. They might leave the TV on to the next morning and shit. We just in that bitch doing what we want to do. Survival of the fittest. So, you know, niggas that ain't built like that, man, they kind of like try to stay out of eyesight and shit. You know what I mean? So like we was in there, niggas in that bitch shooting dice all night, tatting, you know what I'm saying, just going crazy. Niggas out there at the control booth hollering at they little hoes, all type of shit. You know what I'm saying? So what happened on the weekends, like I said, no administration there. You know what I'm saying? So everything is like, you know, when you at work and your boss not there, the shit go crazy sometimes. So on the weekend, she would take the Bloods and shit up in the front, you know, giving them they little pack and giving them niggas pussy and shit. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's always, in that crowd, it's gonna always be a little tender dick. So that's pretty much what happened and shit. Nigga got in his feelings about some shit, wasn't going his way as he thought it should and shit, and blew the whistle on that shit. And that took the little Bloods down. You know what I'm saying? That just opened up the door as far as like for other niggas, like independent hustlers and shit, to get in with some of the guards and shit, and get that shit going how it's supposed to go too. You know what I'm saying? They ain't never stopped. It just moved on to the next thing that wasn't that hot. You know what I'm saying? But that's how they shit went at that particular time. So like every few months that shit'll rotate. You know what I'm saying? You might look up, man, and shit, it be 30 Crips in that bitch out of 60 people and shit, and about 5-6 Bloods. You know what I mean? You know, so shit, it just how it was and shit. But ultimately, it always went between the Crips and the Bloods. They always had the bigger of the pot because they was the deepest and shit. You know what I'm saying? And that's how that shit went. And then, like, as far as the Latinos, you know, they had their own little thing going and shit. And only time it was a clash, if it was disrespect, you know what I'm saying? And motherfuckers putting them hands up, you know, that's just how that shit go out there. You gonna fight about that shit. Like, Illinois prisons and shit, don't get me wrong, they deadly and shit, you know, on a different level. But, like, down in Texas and in them southern joints and shit like that, you definitely gonna fight about that shit. You gonna talk, but that shit gonna lead up to pretty much, like, who finna throw them bitches after this conversation and shit. So that's just what it was in there. But yeah, them Bloods, they had a hell of a run up in that bitch. You know what I'm saying? And shit, I ain't like I always tell you, I ain't gonna talk y'all head off, but I'm gonna keep dropping these bitches for whoever wanna hear it and shit.